They're attacking folks who they call able-bodied Americans on Medicaid, in fact saying that they may force them to take jobs filled by undocumented farm workers. Listen to the Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, saying that 34 million able-bodied people on Medicaid could serve as potential labor force for farms.
There's been a lot of noise in the last few days and a lot of questions about where the president stands in his vision for farm labor. The first thing I'll say is the president has been unequivocal that there will be no amnesty, and I think that's very, very important. I and the rest of our cabinet certainly support that, effectuate that, and make sure that happens every single day. The second thing, to your question about mass deportations, the president and I have spoken about that once or twice, and he has always been of the mindset that at the end of the day, the promise to America to ensure that we have a 100% American workforce stands, but we must be strategic in how we are implementing the mass deportation so as not to compromise our food supply. Ultimately, the answer on this is automation, also some reform within the current governing structure. And then also when you think about there are 34 million able-bodied adults in our Medicaid program. There are plenty of workers in America, but we just have to make sure we're not compromising today, especially in the context of everything we're thinking about right now. So no amnesty under any circumstances. Mass deportations continue, but in a strategic and intentional way as we move our workforce toward more automation and toward a 100% American workforce.
Really? This initiative is part of Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, which introduces the first ever federal work requirements for Medicaid recipients. I really can't wait to see, Larry, a lot of these white folks being sent to farms.
Yeah, so the reason why you have migrant workers, among others, obviously making a serious contribution to our economy is that Americans don't want these jobs, Roland. And that's just the bottom line. This is hard work. And so what you hear the secretary describing is like is servitude. And let's be clear about what we're hearing here. The other thing is really interesting about, this comments about, those individuals who are on Medicaid is that they're talking about a lot of their voters. And I don't think when a lot of this language is used, the way they switch it up, I don't think when they talk about people being at home and lazy, et cetera, they're talking about a lot of their voters in red states. And I think those folks only hear immigrants and other people, but then they're talking about you and they're taking your Medicaid. And the other thing is, as it relates to this overall conversation, is it also talks about how they value other people's humanity. The majority of people, a significant individuals, a percentage of Americans work at jobs, but they don't even qualify for things like health care. So this is really more of an issue in terms of the economic healthcare structure, in terms of individuals not only making a living wage, but also providing with comprehensive health care. But we're not going to have that conversation because then that will force people to critique local, state, and federal government. So what you hear from the secretary, once again, is essentially describing some kind of servitude for Americans. And secondly, once again, Americans are not taking those jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's so you see, I saw this video here, 100 undocumented workers at Glen Valley Foods in Nebraska and got arrested. And so now the right is saying, oh, my goodness, it was packed. People were filling out forms for those jobs. Yeah, that's working at a plant. I'm telling you right now, Mustafa, these white folks ain't going to be in that heat picking no damn fields.
Right. Most Americans, I've worked on farm worker issues of beginning in the early part of my career. So I know I've seen personally how hard that work is. And it's interesting because when we talk about the folks who are on Medicaid, we're talking about people who are poor and sick and elderly and disabled and folks who are just trying to make it. I thought that they actually were going to go after the prison population. We're going to try and get them to do a lot of this work. But the reality of the situation is, you got a whole lot of people across this country, are dealing with opioid addiction and dealing with fentanyl, dealing with all these different types of things that, has already lowered their immune system, made them weaker. So you're going to put them out there in the fields when it's 100+ degrees, sometimes 110 degrees, working 12 hours, sometimes making, just literally pennies on the dollar. Americans are just not going to do that. I mean, there's just no way that you're going to be able to make that become a reality. And so when you make these they're not snap decisions. When these folks make these sort of decisions that have these huge ramifications, they're not fully thinking it through. They're assuming that people, as Larry said, are going to be okay with being indentured servants. But that's just not the case. Whether you're talking about folks in Appalachia, you're talking about folks that are in the Rust Belt, you're talking about folks that are down in the Black Belt, it's just not a reality. And of course, it is a whole lot of their folks. So they voted for this without probably having the full understanding that you are also sacrificable, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're finding people who they feel that they have no value, and they're going to try and push them into these very difficult jobs. And there's a reason why, folks demonize folks who are immigrants to our country. But the reality is that they're helping to hold up this economy. And now you are completely destabilizing it. And now they're going to be looking for the next set of scapegoats to push this capitalistic set of actions forward.
Well, these white folks are not. So check this out. I'm going to read it first. This is from the American Business Immigration Coalition. I said I'm going to read it first. Come to me before I play it. No. I'm going to play it. Hold on. I'm going to read it first. Immigrants are critical to the farming industry, said Rebecca Shee, CEO of the American Business Immigration Coalition. Wait until y'all hear these numbers that she lays out in the video. And I'm telling you, Tyler, these white folks are not going to be on farms. They are not going to be in the heat 12, 14 hours a day. I'm telling you. So listen to this. This is from February of this year.
The Trump administration's push for mass deportations has major cities like Chicago on high alert. But some residents in rural areas are also expressing concern, specifically farmers who are worried about losing their workforce. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates that 42% of farm workers are undocumented immigrants. Joining us now with more on the potential impact are Rebecca Shee, Chief Executive Officer at the American Business Immigration Coalition. And joining us via Zoom is Stephen Dorloff, a professor in educational policy at the University of Chicago and the director of Stone Center for Research on Wealth Inequality and Mobility. Thank you both for joining us. Rebecca, I want to start with you. How important is the immigrant workforce to the farming industry?
Thank you so much for having me. Immigrants are critical to the farming industry. Agriculture is a $3 trillion industry, and 72% of the ag workforce are immigrants.
What do you say to those people who have, many different opinions on what's going on with immigration and who should be, who is illegal and who's not, especially when it comes to, such big workforce like farming?
Right. Well, we appreciate having eggs on our shelves. I mean, I'm having a hard time finding eggs right now, and I'm sure a lot of viewers are as well. We appreciate having avocados and milk. And if you were to just remove a significant part of our farm workforce, we're going to start seeing $20 lettuces, $16 cartons of eggs, or no milk, because nearly all of the dairy farmers and farm workers here in our nation, including in Illinois and the Midwest, are immigrants.
Also gonna need that extended warranty.
These people crying and whining, Tyler, and they voted for Trump.
Absolutely, and I think this is just a sign of when you do not vote your interest in how it plays the game. You now become on the menu, per se. And I agree even more with my fellow panelists that this is nothing short of modern day indentured servitude, and it's cruel. And I think it also mirrors a part in American history from sharecropping to chain gangs. And this is just a mirror of that. And I think it's clear you cannot pick your way out of poverty, and people deserve health care without being treated like their state-owned labor. And as you said, if they're going to tell people to get out there in them fields, I can already hear the Michael Jackson meme. They were like, get somebody else to do it.
I'm just saying, it's going to be a lot of people just sitting here, just whining and complaining. And I'm just going to sit here and watch it all happen and watch them sing, cry, because again, they thought they were talking about some other people.
Mm-hmm.
They thought they were referring to some other people. But they are about to learn real quick, no, it was y'all. It was y'all they were talking about. And that's what I'm gonna enjoy the most, Mustafa, because all these people, that's why we had a shirt, pull the graphic up, FAFO 2025. And we got project crossed out. That's for y'all, because they about to learn. See, when they talk about 34 million, see, a lot of white folk in America go, that's them black folks.
Mm-hmm.
That's them black folks. We played on the show Tommy Tuberville talking about them inner city rats, taking federal aid. We got to sit here and do something about them inner city rats. And see, they do that and they love thinking it's somebody else. But then they look up and realize, no, they talking about you. And see, all these folks in these red areas, they love talking about, and they think it's everybody else. See, these broke white people, and let me be real clear, I'm using the phrases for a reason. These broke, illiterate, sick white people in red states, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Arkansas, West Virginia, parts of Virginia. All these folk, they love thinking it's somebody else. It's them people. It's those people. It's them people. That it's not us. We the good people. We the nice people. They not talking about us. They not gonna take our health care. They not gonna take money from us. No, they talking about you. This is Tommy Tuberville talking to the man who took a bunch of money from the Russians, Benny Johnson. Again, he talking about inner city, but he talking about white folks in Alabama. Listen.
Yeah, I've spoken several times with Tom Holman, who is basically running the inner city ICE programs. And, he told me, he said he's been pushed at every corner when he goes to these big cities. I'm sure if you get a mayor like this that takes over, it'll even be worse. And that's when you can stop the federal funding. You can do anything. President Trump can do anything he wants when it comes to the federal. Again, these inner city rats, they live off the federal government. And that's one reason we're $37 trillion in debt. And it's time that we find these rats and we send them back home that are living off the American taxpayers that are working very hard every week to pay taxes.
Even though his state is the sixth largest in the country that gets federal dollars. I guess he's talking about rural rats too, like in Alabama.
Yeah, if that's the criteria that he's going to operate from, that's just the reality of the situation. I've worked with a lot of communities, over 1,000 communities in our countries, and a number of those have been lower wealth white communities. And when I come back to Washington D.C. and hear how some of these folks talk about poor white folks, they don't see them as human, right? They see them as less than. And I wish that, our lower wealth white brothers and sisters understood, that these folks do not value them and that they should be operating, in partnership with all the other vulnerable communities and individuals who are out there so that you could actually make real change happen, because these folks just use you. That's the reality. I know it personally. I grew up in Appalachia. I've seen the disinvestment in so many different types of communities, of course, Black communities and brown communities, but also in lower wealth white communities. And so when you see people like Tuberville or all these other individuals, who are making salaries that, folks who are out there just trying to survive would love to have, that's the dynamic that's playing out. So I'm gonna give everybody a quick stock tip as well, Roland, as I pass it back to you. If you want to make a whole lot of money right now, then go out and invest in sunblock. And I guarantee you, for all those folks who are going to have to be out there in the fields, you're going to make some money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.